All right, ladies and gents, we're going to get started. We're going to work on integer operations today. Integers, right here, are negative and positive numbers. So we're going to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide them. Some of you might already have a really good idea of how to do this. Some of you, this is going to be a difficult skill, and it's one we're going to practice and keep exposing ourselves to over the course of the year. Okay, you're going to turn to page 9 in your interactive binder. So if you need to pause the video, go ahead and do that. But on page 9, it's a yellow page we glued in last week. And you should be able to find that yellow page there that we glued in, and we're going to take some notes on it. You are going to need some colored pencils. So again, if you need to pause, go ahead and do so. Now remember, we talked in class about how it's really important that you're listening and you're paying attention and you're taking notes. Okay, you're not watching the squirrel that's climbing the tree out the window or the birds that are flying by. It's really important that you are at a good spot where you can focus. If you need to stop and take a break and get up and move around for a minute, you can certainly do that. You can pause the video after we do addition and subtraction and go back and work on some of your problems, and then come back and listen to multiplication and division because the rules are different. So you can certainly do that as well. You do what you need to do. Okay, so we're going to talk about adding first. So when I add numbers that have the same sign, okay, I'm going to underline that in one of my colors. When I add them with the same sign, I add them together and I keep the sign. It's pretty easy. So here I have two negative numbers. I can add -3 and -1, and that's a total of -4. So that's kind of like thinking about, I owe Mrs. Banda $3. So when I owe it, it's like I have -$3 because I have to give it away. And I owe Mrs. Meyer -$1. So I have to give that away as well. So when I give those two away, I'm now giving away a total of $4. Here's another example. I have -4 and -5. 4 plus 5 is 9, and it's negative, so I'm going to keep the sign just like it says in my notes. I'm going to skip the next problem because that's a negative and a positive number. I'm going to skip the fourth problem as well because it's one of each. I'm going to come down to this last problem, and even though I see a positive later on, here are two numbers that are the same. They're both negatives. So 4 plus 2 is 6, and it's negative. Now, sometimes our signs are different, and when the signs are different, we have to circle and subtract. So it says to subtract the absolute value of the numbers. Use the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So what that means, ladies and gents, is that I have a +6 and a -10. My 6 and my 10, if I come up here and I draw a really quick number line, here's 0 in the middle, here would be 6, here would be -10. We need to figure out which one is a greater distance from 0. Well, this is 6 away, and when I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, this one's 10 away. This is a greater distance. So I'm going to circle the number that's a greater distance away from 0. All right, so if I were to count these, okay, this is 10 away, this is 6 away. So I'm going to circle and subtract, circle and subtract. When you have one of each, you circle and subtract. So I have one of each. I have a positive, I have a negative. I'm going to circle the one that I have more of, or it's a greater distance from 0, which is 10. 10 take away 6 is 4, and because I circled the 10, it's negative. My answer is -4. If you look up here, if I were to go from -10 and add 6 to it, when I add, I move to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here I am at -4, just like that. Okay, let's try another one. I have a negative and a positive. I look to see which one is a greater distance from 0 if I were thinking on the number line. Well, this is 16 away. +5 is only 5 away. So I'm going to circle and subtract. 16, take away 5 is 11. The number I circled is negative, therefore my answer is negative. Down here at the bottom, I already figured out that this was -6, and here I have +6. Well, which one's a greater distance from 0? This is 6 away. This is 6 away as well. So I can't really circle either of them, But if I owe Mrs. Banda negative or $6, so it's a negative number, and I have $6, that means I break even. -6 plus +6 is 0. Now, when we go down to subtraction, it sounds a little bit complicated, but it's really not. To subtract when I have a negative or a positive, all I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the first number. I'm going to change the subtraction sign to addition. And then I'm going to change the sign of the second number and find its opposite. So if it's positive, I'm going to make it negative. If it's negative, I'm going to make it positive. All right, so my first number stays the same. I'm going to change subtraction to addition, and my negative becomes positive. My second problem, keep the first number the same. Subtraction becomes addition. This becomes a positive. First number stays the same. Subtraction becomes addition. Negative becomes positive. First number stays the same. I keep. I change it to addition. And my positive, I change to a negative. So now I ignore the problem that I had previously. My new problem is now -5 plus +4. Earlier, it was a minus, a negative, but I changed it to plus a positive. So now I'm kind of ignoring this problem, and I'm looking at it like this. Okay, same thing with the next problem. It's -1 plus 35 now. I'm ignoring what was there previously because I changed it using these rules. Okay, so when my signs are the same, I can add them together. My first problem here, my signs aren't the same, so I'm going to underline in blue, okay? My second problem here, my numbers are not the same, so I'm going to underline in blue and use the rules up above. My next problem, I have now a positive and a positive. My numbers are the same, so this problem changed to 10 plus 8. The answer is 18. And if I look at my last problem, I have a negative and a negative. When I have a negative and a negative, I can add 20 and 19 together and get 39. My answer is negative. Let's come back up here. Let's look at my other two problems. I have different signs, so I'm going to circle and subtract when I have one of each, right? -5 and +4. This is 5 away. 4 is only 4 away. So I circle my 5, and then I ignore the sign. 5, take away 4 is 1. My answer is -1, okay? And again, I could come down here and I could do a number line. And I have -5. And I'm going to add 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It puts me here at -1. Right? And then my last problem, I'm going to circle the 35 because 35 is a greater distance than 1. 35, remember then I subtract. 35 take away 1, I get 34. My 35, it was negative here in my problem, but remember I changed it to positive. So I'm now ignoring this problem and I'm looking at my new problem. My answer is positive. We're going to write a little note down at the bottom of our paper in the white space. We need to write that when you subtract a negative, so subtracting a negative is like adding a positive. So let me explain what that means while you write that. Subtracting a negative is like adding a positive. All right. Let's see if I can get this erased here. There we go. So let's look at this problem. Okay. Here's what that means. So when I subtract a negative, see how I'm subtracting a negative here? Here's a negative, and there's my subtraction sign. When I subtract a negative, it's like adding the opposite, which is a positive. So anytime I have minus and negative, it's actually like I'm adding that negative, which becomes a positive. Okay? All right. You can stop the video and go work on some of your problems, or if you're interested and you want to keep going and working, that's fine. We're going to move over and we're going to look at multiplication and division. Multiplication and division is actually, in my opinion, way easier than addition and subtraction. Okay? So, we are going to grab some more colors and look at this. Here's the rule for multiplication and for division. The rules are the same. When you have two positives, you guys already know this. When we have two positives, my answer is positive. When I have two negatives, here's the weird thing. Two negatives also make a positive. If I have just one negative, my answer is negative. So basically what I do for multiplication and down here for division is I count the number of negatives, which is kind of weird, but that's what you do. Oops, I didn't mean to turn that. Sorry, guys. Okay, so we're going to write down below here in the white space, we're going to write that two negatives, and this is only for multiplication and division, two negatives make a positive, which is kind of weird. So a negative times a negative always becomes a positive. If I have an odd number of negatives, my answer is always negative. So for example, if I take negative 3 times negative 1 times negative 2, I have 1, 2, 3 negatives. My answer is always going to be negative. What if I add this to the front of it? I now have 1, 2, 3, 4 negatives. That's an even number. My answer is going to be positive because these two negatives cancel each other out. And these two negatives cancel each other out to make a positive. Okay? So let's come up here and let's solve some of these problems. All right? So I have 3 times 1 is 3. I have 1, 2 negatives. Therefore, my answer is negative. The next problem, I have 4 times 2 is 8. I have 1 negative. 1 negative. Oh, guys, I just totally messed up. Let me go back here. You're probably confused. I apologize for that. A negative times a negative, I had a brain fart there, becomes a positive. Sorry about that. That didn't make any sense. Let's try my next problem now. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 negative, my answer is negative. 7 times 3 is 21. 1 negative, my answer is negative, just like I showed you here. 2 times 4 is 8. 1 negative, my answer is negative. Now, these problems here, when a number is next to another number in parentheses, that means multiplication. That's actually back on our invisible math board for those of you that are in my classroom. But when a number is next to another number that's in parentheses, it means multiplication. So 4 times 2 is 8. A negative times a negative becomes a positive. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 negative becomes negative. And then you see this plus sign here. We didn't do anything with it, so we have to bring it down. We have to go over and follow the rules for addition. I have positive 8, negative 6. It looks to me like we have one of each, so I get to sing to you. When we have one of each, we circle and subtract. 8 is a greater distance from 0, so 8, take away the 6, gives me 2, and I have more positives. My answer is positive 2. Let's come down to division. The rules are exactly the same. 30 divided by 6 is 5. 2 negatives make a positive. 44 divided by 4 is 11. They're both positive. 6 divided by 12. If I have 6 lollipops, can I split them between 12 people? Yeah, that's not going to work, right? So remember that division and the fraction bar mean the same thing. So I can write it as 6 out of 12. I have one negative, so my answer is negative. And hopefully some of you know that 6 out of 12 is the same thing as negative 1/2. And finally, the last one, 12 divided by 6 is 2. 1 negative means the answer is negative. We're going to keep practicing this. Some of you, you picked up on it and you're ready to rock and roll. Some of you, this is a little bit more difficult, and that's okay. We're going to just practice it today. We're going to keep exposing ourselves to this and practicing this as the year goes on. All right?